Well, hello, everybody. Happy Fun Friday out there in our beautiful land of enchantment today. And we're excited to bring you another great edition of our small business webinar resource program with our partners at New Mexico Mutual. We're so excited to have them join us for our May series and be our sponsor to get all this information out to all you business owners and the community in general. And also to our partners at New Mexico Tech, who make all of this possible. And of course, Angelique behind the scenes over here with the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce. And we're excited today, guys. We have a great topic for you. We're going to talk about worker safety during this time. And so we have a pretty great panel with us. We have our partner, Erica from New Mexico Mutual, and our board chair, Ms. Mary Martinez. So we're going to get into that in just a second. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping and let everybody know that in a way for us to gather all of the information and how we pick these topics and what have you, is we have this really great survey that we do. And if you just log on to our website at www.ahcnm.org, the very top, you're going to see a little section that says COVID initiatives. You can click that. It'll come down to Hispano Helps. And every one of those pages there will have a link to the survey. And not only to the survey, but they'll have all of these videos in case you've missed them for the last couple of months. It also has some other small business resource trainings from different partners, members that we've been working with the last couple of weeks, actually a couple of months. And it also has some of the other initiatives that we're doing in order to keep the community safe and up to date with what's happening during COVID. So again, visit our website, and you can also catch the survey really easily at the top of our Facebook page, pinned right to the top when you get up there. So we thought this would be a really appropriate time to talk about worker safety. We thought it would be an appropriate time to learn, as we start our rephases of reopening in New Mexico, the important things that you guys need to do. So with us today, we have Erica with New Mexico Mutual and Miss Mary Martinez. So if you ladies would take a minute to introduce yourself, and then we're going to jump right into this conversation.
Go ahead, Erica.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Erica Moncayo, and I am a senior risk and safety consultant with New Mexico Mutual. And just very pleased to be with you today and talk to you about how to safely protect your employees at work during this uncertain time, as well as also being able to safely help you reintegrate your employees into the workplace.
Absolutely. Miss Mary?
I'm Mary Martinez, and I'm the owner of Home Instead Senior Care. We are a non-medical home care provider here in the Albuquerque metro area. So this is an area we've had a lot of focus on. So this is a good topic.
Great topic. And Mary is also our 2020 board chair with the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber. And so it's been a great year so far with Mary, and we look forward to many more months. Although she's been around for a long time.
Yeah,
so
it's been an interesting year. It's getting more interesting.
and this year just gets better and better. You know, it's just like, wow, every day we're very fluid these days around here, lots of pivoting. So I want to just basically start, right off the bat. This is an uncertain time, as Erica just mentioned, and there's a lot of things that people are having to adjust to in their places of employment and how they're working with their employees that stayed on during COVID, and for those businesses that are now getting ready to reopen. So I think, quite honestly, let's just open with the most important question. What are some things that employers can do during this time to really help their employees feel safe and really ensure that they're doing everything they can to stay within those guidelines?
Okay, well, I can answer that just based on what I've been doing. We never did close because we can't. We're essential, and we've got people out in the community we care for every day. But with a management team of 15 people, based on what the governor mandated for us, we have 10 telecommuters and 5 people that come in the office. So one of the things that we immediately did is communicated with our cleaning company that comes in 3 times a week. They now sanitize those 3 days a week that they're here, every surface, everything. So the days that they're not here, we all end our days going through and doing exactly that. We sanitize the whole building, doorknobs, anything that anybody would even think about touching, we're sanitizing it. We all have masks and gloves at our desks. So We also limit who comes in the building. If you're going to come in the building, you have to call us from the parking lot. And if you need something that we, you know, as far as PPE supplies that we give our caregivers or log notes or anything, they call from the parking lot and we go out there masked and gloved and hand it to them. So any precaution that we can have to, you know, mitigate any exposures at all, that's what we're doing.
Wonderful. And Erica, I mean, this is a hot topic for you guys right now. So
Absolutely. So
please,
one of the things that we do are offer our resources, our education, our knowledge. But as I was briefly talking with Mary before we got started is, you know, these are uncertain times where there's a lot of unknowns, right? So really understanding how do we identify what practices should we utilize? First and foremost, you know, as if you are a policyholder of New Mexico Mutual, we offer our services at no additional fee. It's included in your premium. So whether it's, you know, helping you write an infectious control plan, guiding you through that, helping you identify through hazard assessment, you know, okay, what type of customers are you actually working with? Mary's, you know, probably very similar to those frontliners, right? They never, but what about those that really aren't as regulated through the OSHA guidelines? They may not understand what it is they're supposed to do. So, you know, we offer our services to our policyholders. I encourage those of you that are not a New Mexico Mutual policyholder to reach out to your agent or your carriers to see what those resources are. You'd be surprised how helpful and readily available they are to assist you.
So, you know, here's an interesting question. I think this will definitely guide the next little bit of conversation. But Erica, share with us, what are some of the ways that COVID can affect the workplace? What are some of the things that we need to know?
So if you look back at what has gone on over the past couple of months, right? Absenteeism, people are afraid to maybe come to work, or maybe what has really gone on in this time frame, and when did it actually hit us? Right in the middle of allergy season, right? Absenteeism, it can cause a high rate of absenteeism, maybe not only because individuals are sick, but maybe because their daycare providers are not open. So it can really affect a workplace in that situation. It can also change in the patterns of commerce, you know, consumer demands and items that are just not readily available. That has affected all of us, right? How many of you tried to purchase disinfectant wipes in the past couple of weeks, much less in the past couple of months? You know, that commerce has been limited. Our supply and demand has definitely changed. Who would have ever thought hand sanitizer or even just alcohol alone, right, would be available? So the interruption of supply and delivery, you know, shipments and so forth, for those industries that rely heavily on our postal services or those private carriers, Federal Express, especially when it comes to overnighted items, you know, how has that affected them? And so they need to be able to be prepared for how are they going to obtain their supplies, especially personal protective equipment. So, you know, that has been one of the biggest effects for us. What we do, our personal touch, going out into the workplace, assessing areas, facilities, or hazards, also providing safety training. I couldn't tell you how many trainings have been closed or canceled or continuously rescheduled until we identify when it is actually safe and healthy to go back into a workplace to provide some of those services. So we've had to become, we had to think outside the box, right? And what is everybody doing? They're doing virtual training. So really trying to step out of that, or essentially our comfort zone. I love people. I love engaging and interacting. And so that has really put a hindrance on me to be able to change the way that I provide safety training. And, you know, one of the things that we are encouraged to do as safety professionals is to engage and interact the adult learner. That's quite difficult when you're trying to deliver something in a virtual manner. So really trying to think outside of the box and utilizing the resources that we have to be able to provide that interaction has been a challenge, but we've overcome it because we do work for such a great organization that really embraces whatever it is that we need to do, whatever resources we need to provide to our policyholders to make sure that they receive what they need.
So I think it's really interesting, you brought that up, and I want to just touch a quick second on it, because it has been such an incredible we say a couple months, but honestly, March, April, and May, we're at the end of May next week. So it's been 3 months.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And, close to 3 months. And I think we're losing track of time is what's happening. But
yeah, what day is it?
We lost a whole month.
Like everything just runs now. You feel like you're working all the time, but you're not working all the time. It's just so weird. But I think one of the things that you touched on that's been so important is this adult way of training. When all this is happening, you see all the kids around us, the nieces and nephews, the whatever, the kids that you have, and they're already doing this. They're virtual, they're on their phones, they're on all this equipment, and we've had an adjustment. And though we know the basics, I mean, I can't even imagine what Zoom has been through, what Google Hangouts and Microsoft Teams has been through, and all these different virtual platforms, being able to support, the millions of people that have had to learn to use technology. So training is a completely different monster right now. It's how do you effectively train, and how do we provide them the correct equipment to do that, which is some sort of a virtual platform. So that in itself has been a really a struggle for a lot, of people that aren't really technology forward. So I think the silver lining in it is we've all learned a little bit more about technology, and hopefully we'll continue that trend in the future. And so with that being said, I think, another point to make, maybe Erica, you can help us out with this a little bit, is, what are some of the steps that employers can take to make their employees feel safe coming back to work, and help, to avoid the spread? We hope that doesn't happen at all, but, we still have to practice diligence.
So one of the things that I always try to take it down to, a lower level, try to be very informative and understanding as to, what an employer should do. Essentially, they need to recognize what is the hazard. In this situation, it is COVID-19, right? And we think about what hazards exist with that particular topic. And when you think about a hazard, I like to think about just this basic acronym of MAC, M-A-C. So any material, action, activity, or condition that can cause harm. And how do we essentially corral that, right? One of the things that I would recommend is to develop an infectious disease prevention or preparedness response plan. We've already been educating our policyholders on that. It is should be part of your emergency action plan. You should be prepared for any possible type of an emergency. We're very fortunate here in the state of New Mexico where we don't have earthquakes and hurricanes and some of the natural disasters that could affect us. But, this is not just a nationwide, a statewide, this is a worldwide pandemic. So it's very important that, they start there. What would that look like? Where, how, and to what sources of COVID might these employees be impacted by? So could it be just the general public? If you're a restaurant, could it be coworkers that maybe have to go out into the field and work at a different dynamic than what you are in the workplace, meaning a field worker and an office worker? Are they visitors coming into your workplace? So identifying where that hazard can come from, right? Who could be possibly transmitting that risk to us, the worker, or our workers, right? Prepare and implement a basic infection prevention measures, meaning protecting our workers and instructing them on just basic hand washing, all the things that have come out from the CDC and the guidelines that have been set forth by, NIOSH and so forth. And, helping them understand that if they're going to use a hand sanitizer, to make sure that it has 60% or greater alcohol content, just really encourage those employees that if they're ill or they're feeling ill to stay home, implementing and embracing that change, right? Because it's different than what we're accustomed to. Now, flu season, I know that I've always seen things put up in our, flyers put up in our bathrooms and our restrooms about, constantly washing our hands, sneezing into our elbow, those kind of things. But it really comes to light in something like this. We really start to pay attention more. And I think that because of this, our employers, our policyholders, our partners are really going to think twice about how and what they can do to recognize potential risks, right? Potential hazards. It's here. There's nothing you can do about it.
So in continuation of that question, Mary brought it up a little bit earlier, sanitizing certain surfaces and areas. And we think about the basics, we think about the door knobs and things like that. But let's talk a little bit about how this can be contracted. What are some of those areas and how can we, maybe how can we help to remind employees to be able to watch for all those surface areas? And so we know what some of those are, but love for you ladies to share with us some of the unique things that we don't think about.
It's funny. We all just kind of did this thing when this first started, is think about it. Everything that you touch from the time you get out of your car, starting right there, getting in your car, getting out of your car, pulling the door open to walk into the building, you've already had 3 touch points before you even got in the door. So if you hadn't hand sanitized when you got in your car and cleaned off your steering wheel, I mean, you can be hyper aware of all these things, but if you just simply keep your hands clean and the things that you use, like, your mouse. When I come in, it's like at the end of the day, we all kind of wipe down everything: the keyboard, the mouse, the phone, the file cabinet, drawer handles, doorknobs. It's anything that you even think about. My lamp switch, turning it off and on. I'm like, oh yeah, I should do that too. So it's everything. It's just being very aware, and you can put it in simple terms for people as just a list that eventually, they absorb it and they remember it. So what I do every Friday is I get an email alert out to every single caregiver and staff member that goes out in an email blast, so they get it real time. And it's all the pointers for the week. What did we learn this week? What's a new trick that we can all learn from and start enacting? And the clients get a similar letter letting them know, this is what we're doing with our caregivers. This is what we're doing as far as mitigation. And, we want your comments. We want your feedback. We want to hear what your concerns are. So I think opening up the communication and inviting questions and suggestions makes people feel like you are working on it and that they can be part of the solution.
I think that's really encouraging that she says that. She really touches on a point that we've began to implement, is just a basic checklist that employers can utilize, develop policies and procedures for prompt identification and isolation of sick individuals, or how are you going to interact with that individual who is coming to your door, or your customer, that you're typically accustomed to hugging them. So even just those basic handshakes, revert to, that 6-foot social distance. And that's difficult sometimes for people who really embrace that physical touch, right? And those reminders, placing out reminders regularly, develop policies and procedures for proper cleaning. So not just verbally communicating, but also, a written development of, a checklist, because sometimes, as Mary indicated, okay, we're discussing this in a weekly meeting and employers are encouraged to do so, but what if that person didn't quite get it because they had something else on their mind? And that happens, right? We're concerned about maybe our aging parent who absolutely has to go to the doctor, and we really didn't want that to happen, but it's kind of something we couldn't avoid. And so my mind wasn't there. And, also developing and implementing those procedures at a level that our employees can read and understand. That's very critical, especially with training. So you must provide safety programs, policies, and procedures in a language and vocabulary that they can understand. So, depending on your workforce and depending on their level of understanding, they have to be able to communicate back to you what it is that you just explained to them.
I really love I really love all of this conversation because it really gets you thinking. I'm sitting here thinking in my head, every day before we leave, our vice president's been really good about going around and spraying and sanitizing and cleaning. And, the way that we first approached is, like Mary said, from the second you get out of your car to the second you sit down, where do you go during the day when you're inside the office? What do you touch? And the one thing that we did not cover was any sort of a lamp switch. Now we did light plates, the switch lights, but a lamp switch. I mean, you're at work, you're in your car, you come home, you switch the lamp switch off and on. Your husband does it, your kids do it, everybody's touching that lamp switch. And it's just incredible the places that our hands go. And we just don't really think about that stuff. So that's a way to think. So if you're out there watching, please share with us some of the unique places that we might be missing that we're not even thinking about. My husband over the weekend, he cleaned the back of our chairs. We're sitting at a dining table, you pull the chair out, and I have wood backs. They're not like cushion backs. So he pulled them out, and so there I was, oh, he just touched it. So I went and cleaned everything, because you don't think about those things. So it's
you feel like you're chasing them everywhere they go, right?
But it really helps me to think about, if I'm doing this at home, I'm probably doing it at work. I'm pulling chairs out, I'm touching
Absolutely.
So
one of the biggest things that I think we just need to really embrace is hand washing.
Yeah.
Hand washing. One of the things that I have always done, even before this happened, is when I leave the grocery store, but of course, I'm getting in my vehicle, I'm touching everything, so I'm not disinfecting that. But as soon as I walk in the door, I wash my hands. So kind of the same concept that I have embraced now. I carry hand sanitizer with me because we all know it's difficult to wash our hands with everything that we touch as we move forward in addressing our daily lives, right? We have errands to run, we have groceries to buy, doing our essential duties. But I carry a little baggie of disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizer. So I get in the vehicle, I carry a paper towel or something with me, so I utilize that. But I disinfect my hands when I get in. I disinfect my high touch points in my vehicle. But the minute I come into the house, I wash my hands, then I disinfect those items that I've touched. But sometimes we become complacent, right? And we forget about that. So I think just really ingraining into our minds and into our employees' minds, our partners, whomever that might be, those that are colleagues, just wash your hands constantly. And then we're not constantly trying to go back and thinking about all those high touch points, right? If we really practice hand washing, then we kind of eliminate, but we don't want to forget. So we have to make sure that we're keeping that checklist essentially of what, the do's and don'ts.
So basically, we're going back to our childhood when grandma and mom said, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands.
Yes.
We don't even think about that. But before we move forward, because I know we have a little presentation and we want to talk about some workplace controls and things like that, I want to just touch base really quick on, and not that anybody here is an expert in any ways, but we did talk about that 60% when we're talking about the sanitizer, and we're talking about making sure that, that people are finding the right sanitizer, there's sanitizer popping up everywhere. And it's been interesting because the last couple of weeks, I've had a lot of reach out. And I happen to be part of a distillery here that is pretty big in town that is making hand sanitizer. So I had several people go out and buy sanitizer, and they're like, wait a minute, this thing's like liquid. What am I supposed to do with it? I said, well, first of all, it's high grade. This is an FDA recipe. It's supposed to be like that. They don't all have to be gel. You got to look at the bottle and see what it is. So the simplest way to do that is put it into a spray bottle. We're used to sanitizer our whole lives being the pump. And even sanitizer wasn't a big deal up until 3 months ago. And so I always tell everybody, put it in there. And I actually like the spray because of what Erica said. When I get in my car now at the grocery store, or wherever I happen to be, I spray my hands, I spray my steering wheel, and that stuff evaporates, but it hits the surface and kills all that bacteria. So the spray for me has been the miracle. I don't have to carry a pump bottle with me anywhere and do that. So, and I still have those around the house or what have you, but the spray has been really amazing. So I don't know what your guys' experience has been, but I know I like the spray bottle. And it's just funny because this has been a big topic of conversation on Facebook the last, couple of weeks.
So I'm not an expert in hand hand sanitizer by no means, but I will tell you that what really caught my eye this morning on the news was that, so a couple things with hand sanitizers, make sure they do have an expiration date. So, I had some that were in my bathroom cabinet that had expired. So looking at expiration dates for one. And the other one is that, alcohol is a flammable. So there was an incident on the news this morning where it was reported that there was a car fire and it was determined that it was caused by hand sanitizer. So, being very conscientious of the chemicals that we use. And that's kind of one of the things that I'd like to get into when we talk about our controls in the workplace.
So I think that's a great segue, and I think we should jump into that right now. I know that there's, some great information that you can share with us about workplace and workplace controls for that. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Erica, to take it away. The beauty of screen share.
I know. So one of the things that I always like to do is, can you see my screen okay?
We can. Thank you.
Is I always go back as a safety professional to what I know. The hierarchy of controls that have been put out by OSHA. And by all means, I really suggest and recommend that you get with a safety professional. At some level, some employers may be exempt. But, when I talked earlier about recognizing a hazard, right? It all goes back to recognizing the hazard, whether it be, COVID-19 or a slip, trip, and fall. These are the things that OSHA recommends that you do to help protect your employees. Eliminate, which means that is, and sometimes employers get this backwards. When I teach my OSHA 10 class, a lot of the times I'll get the feedback on, wow, I thought personal protective equipment was the first line of defense. No, the most effective way is to eliminate the hazard. COVID-19 is here. We can't do that. There's no substitution for it, meaning when you think about a chemical, utilizing a less harmful chemical, that would be an example of a substitution. But, what we do need to do is an engineering control. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like for this particular pandemic. Administrative controls, what that looks like. And then the last line of defense is personal protective equipment. So what does that mean? What is it? What is an engineering control? An engineering control involves isolating employees from work in workplaces where they could be exposed. So that could look like something in as large or as complex as high efficiency air filters, especially like in a hospital and in an isolation room, in a surgical room, to something very basic to a drive-through window or plastic sneeze guards. I'm very impressed as I go into these facilities as they're opening up in these industries that they're utilizing engineering controls, and they probably have no idea that that's actually what they're doing, and they're doing it right. So that's encouraging. The next thing would be an administrative control. If you just absolutely cannot eliminate the hazard through the engineering control, then it's recommended that you utilize an administrative control. Well, what exactly is that? It's when an individual controls an action of a worker or the employer. Typically, administrative controls are changing a work practice, right? Encouraging workers to stay home. Typically, that wasn't an encouragement, right? We wanted everybody to be at work, being effective and efficient and making things, work smoothly. But now, as times change and in these unique times, we really need to encourage our employees that it is okay to stay home if you're feeling ill. And not that we didn't encourage that before, but, it was at some level, some employers may have looked down on that. Oh, you just have a little cough, it's okay. No, we need to really encourage that. Implementing and establishing alternative days and extra shifts. If you think about those areas of worship, they may have to add many different days and different service times because they have to spread out, those that congregation, providing workers with up-to-date education and training their employees on how to properly put on and take off and maintain their personal protective equipment. Those are all administrative controls. The last line of defense always is personal protective equipment. Some may say, well, what's personal protective equipment? They may only know it by PPE. Some examples, gloves, goggles, face shields, face masks, respiratory protection. And I highly encourage those of you that are having to use more advanced personal protective equipment, such as respiratory protection, that you consult with either New Mexico Mutual and your safety consultant, or you reach out to your agent or your contracted safety provider to make sure that your safety programs are in place. There's a lot when it comes to respiratory protection and what the employer must do to make sure they maintain a safe and healthful workplace for their employees. Just saying, here is your respirator, please put this on, is not effective. And it could introduce an additional hazard. So, you know, making sure that they have a written respiratory protection program, making sure that they instruct their employees on how to properly select, maintain, sanitize, as well as utilize the personal protective equipment, how to put it on, how to take it off, how to store it. Those are all really critical and important things. So those are all things that we've developed information for our policyholders on how to instruct or train their employees to do this properly. So, you know, there's a lot that goes with it. And I want to make sure that everybody watching and listening understands that we're here to partner with you to help you through these uncertain times. Some other things that I really would like you to think about and really take back from this presentation is OSHA's requirement for hazardous communications. Shannon, you mentioned something very important that I want to touch on about, you know, your sprays. If you're thinking about disinfectants, read your labeling. Okay, there's a lot more that goes into hazardous communications, but what I really want to touch on is making sure that your employees know about the hazards that could potentially exist with those new chemicals that you've now introduced into the workplace, those disinfectants, and how to use them properly. If you read your labeling, you know, most people don't. And some of the labelings might indicate that, and I was just reading this on a canister of disinfectant wipes. It stated that, you know, kills 99.9% of all germs, okay? But then if you turn it around and you read it, it says kills bacteria, and it gives a listing of types of bacteria. Now remember, this is a virus, not a bacteria. Will kill it in as quick as 15 seconds. But when it talked about viruses, it said that you had to use enough product to keep a solid surface or a non-porous surface visibly wet for 4 minutes. Some products, if you read them, it says visibly wet for 10 minutes. So very important that your employees understand that when you're disinfecting, that you're doing it right. You don't want to just assume, right? So that's why training is very critical. Also, things to think about is record keeping. Some of these issues could become medical records where you need to maintain them for 30 years. Making sure that you have a hazardous communication program and SDS sheets, because those SDS sheets will also advise how to properly handle a first aid measure in the event that maybe that sanitizer gets in somebody's eyes because they didn't know they were supposed to wear personal protective equipment. That's another really good resource to obtain through that SDS sheet, is to understand what kind of personal protective equipment must be utilized while using that disinfectant or, you know, any other type of chemical that now has been introduced into the workplace. Having those programs in writing, and again, those are all things that we at New Mexico Mutual specialize and provide to our policyholders and our partners.
Wow, that was so much good information. I have to tell you, I don't know about you, Mary, but I just learned a whole new thing about the back of cans. You know, I thought I was excited when I read Lysol killed coronavirus over the past 30 years. You know, coronavirus is not new. COVID-19 is just basically, you know, that's the newest version, the 19th version, I guess, in coronavirus. But I didn't know that about the surfaces and stuff. And because we don't take the time to read the back of a bottle. So thank you for that information. That was really interesting. So guys, we have a couple of questions that have been coming up while we are in the, I think we might have to get out of the screen share in order for me to pull them
Sure,
up.
let me stop that. I just also wanted
Here
to,
they are.
I believe that one of my colleagues, our marketing manager, shared some resources with you. Please feel free to distribute those. If you have any questions about where you can find additional resources, by all means, I can provide you with my email address. You can contact me directly. I'll be happy to guide you and, just give you some more information on how you can continue to keep your workplace safe.
Well, and I that's super important. We're going to make sure and share any of those links or resources. We'll put them on our COVID page. We'll attach any links that we can inside of this webinar, because these go out to either YouTube or website or what have you. But let's talk a little bit about some specific guidelines, or some specific, and Mary, please jump in your industry, but some specific industries, and share with us some of those practices for specific industries. Maybe in Mary's case, healthcare, home healthcare, and maybe we talk about some restaurants, office, things like that. So Mary, we could start with you.
Well, as far as what we do, the minute this even started happening, we immediately, I always like to err on the side of caution. I would rather be safe. So the blast went out to the caregiving staff immediately, the management team immediately. We have the blessing of having our we call it the mothership, the main campus of Home Instead. The corporate offices in Omaha were well ahead of this. They actually started giving us information in January, to be prepared, and at that time it was more along the lines of a flu. That's what we were all thinking, but it was reminding people about, as you were talking about, Erica's reading the labels as you're sanitizing surfaces. That was the big push at that time. And then it went to PPE, but people who mix, more doesn't mean better. People who are mixing different cleaning products together in a space that's not well ventilated, they were causing respiratory problems for themselves by kind of doing the overkill situation. So it was advising, that you're well ventilated when you're doing those deep cleans and the sanitization, letting the surfaces air dry, don't spray and then wipe it down, because that's what's going to kill it, is when you let it air dry. So it was really simple little things like that we started with. And then it just sort of grew bigger from there onto, then it was the PPE, when and how to use gloves, when and how to use your mask. For us, we have clients who don't hear very well. So how do we, with a mask, communicate with them? So it's every time you have to say something, you have to step back and lift up your mask so they can see your lips and they understand you. So there is constantly new tools and advice for communicating. When we're doing personal care, we're up close and personal, so gloves and masks. But if we're in the kitchen and we're 6 feet away from the client, then, we don't necessarily have to have gloves on, but we're around food, so we should have masks. It's a lot of rules. And so anytime you're looking at it, what is the cautious approach? I always steer people towards what's the safer way to do that. And you're not being extreme if you're being careful. So that's what we always remind people, is just what would you want to see if you were the client? How would you want to see your caregiver handling this? That's how you should approach that situation. And I can't speak really to restaurants, but I would suggest the same thing, is erring on the side of caution. I do a lot of the curbside thing to support local. And I'm always impressed when I go in and, oh my gosh, those poor folks on the back lines over the grills with masks on when it's so hot, and they're switching out gloves constantly. So I admire that and I appreciate that. That sends a very strong message to me. I think it's a lot of times about the messaging.
Yeah, it is totally about the messaging. And actually that's funny. Erica, before we get to you on some of those other industries, we have some questions coming in. Angelique, I just want to give you a heads up. I'll let you know when we're ready, but if you could pull up our ready to open graphic and flyer, I think we can answer some of these questions with that flyer, if you could get that in the can ready to go. So Erica, let's talk about some of those other industries and what are some practices for those specific industries you might want to share with us. Go ahead, pick industries at random.
Well, say for instance, construction, and essential workers. They've been doing it this entire time, but there had been, you know, in the news, it talked about some uptick in positive testing in that area. And, you know, some of the things that those employers should have already been doing, providing sanitation, you know, making sure that they have an area to wash their hands, that they have potable drinking water, and that they're not sharing a cup amongst each other or a hose or whatever the case may be, right? A lot of the times an employer may not understand what their obligation is to their employees. So they'll just say, well, you know, Circle K is just right down the road. Well, what if Circle K is closed, or, you know, their restrooms are closed? That was kind of something that I encountered early on. We had to take some feed to our cattle in, I guess you would say northeastern New Mexico, but we had to go to northern New Mexico to get it. And, you know, it was 3 hours from here. And, you know, I've been on the, trying to not gain the COVID-19 or COVID-15 or whatever it is that they're calling it. And, you know, so I was consuming a lot of water. Well, what happens when you consume a lot of water? Well, guess what? Nobody's restrooms are open, to err on the side of caution, right? The less touch points we have to clean, the safer we are. And so, you know, those are the things that I want them to consider. You know, some of the other industries, maybe, you know, retail, you know, I think they've all done a really good job, you know, just maybe spacing out and enforcing what they feel to be correct, you know, mandated face coverings. You know, are you going to actually let people in, and, or are you gonna, without a face covering, or are you going to require it? That's got to be something that you as a business owner put into practice and decide amongst yourselves, what is it that you're going to do to protect your employees? Are you going to require that? You know, and making sure that you do everything feasible to protect your employees, giving them the areas to sanitize personally, you know, making a place, making sure that they have the availability to wash their hands, that you have hand sanitizer available to them, and that it is effective and not outdated, essentially, you know. And I think, you know, I can really give a shout out to our businesses throughout our community, and what a great job that they have done, and how encouraging it is to walk into a facility and seeing that their employees are wearing, you know, proper face coverings, and they are practicing social distancing, all while still continuing to remain happy and gracious for what they're doing for us. So, you know, I think, you know, providing a place of employment where they feel safe and where they feel content. And I think that's important. So any industry really should follow the guidelines that we talked about. Think about the hierarchy of controls. Think about what hazards exist by utilizing that basic acronym, MAC. If you can't remember it, think of a hamburger, right? MAC, any material, action, or activity. So a material could be a chemical, right? Am I utilizing this chemical correctly? Any material, action, or activity or condition that can cause harm, and how am I going to eliminate that from causing harm to my employees? Not only my employees, but my consumers, my customers.
So I just want to touch really quick on something you said, construction, which is something I'm familiar with. That's our background, family business. And, you know, PPE, personal protective equipment, is not a new term. It's a new term because of COVID, and people probably have gone through their whole life going, you know, never even hearing it. All of a sudden, PPE, everything's PPE. You know, construction workers have always had, you know, steel-toed boots and hard hats and ear protection, and because it was required. And so now industries that weren't necessarily involved in PPE, say maybe an office setting or, you know, something along those lines, we now have that. And so I think that, you know, when you're thinking about, oh, these people have to wear this equipment to be safe, say in a hospital or in construction or what have you, we now have that in our office, in our retail spaces, and maybe it's a mask or maybe it's sanitizer, whatever that may be, that has now become part of our daily routine and our regular lives, right, our 8 to 5 lives and outside of 8 to 5. So just to kind of correlate and let people kind of understand, you know, PPE is not necessarily new.
It's not going away.
Yes, it's just being reused a whole lot right now because of the condition of the world. Like you stated earlier, this is a worldwide pandemic. And so with that, we had some questions come in. They're a little bit more based on small business, and it was kind of like, what are we doing for small businesses out there? And one of the things that we're doing is we have this great webinar series, and we're providing the information to the business owners, whether it's small business or large business or medium business, whatever you want to say. But whether you're a solopreneur that is working out of your home, or you're a business as Walmart, as large as Walmart, these series are there to be able to help you guys be able to focus. And then you take the pieces that work for you. So like today's series on employee safety, worker safety is different. If you're Mary's business, she's a small business owner, she has to protect her caregivers. That's a whole different way so that they protect their client. If you're a larger business, like a large construction company, you have a different obligation to your employees and to your staff. If you're a small office, it's a different obligation. So one way that we're supporting small business out there is by continuing this webinar series, which we have a new sponsor for the month of June. We're going to announce that next week, and we're going to continue to bring you the topics that are important for you, the business owner, whatever size that may be. Angelique, if you'll take a second and pop up that flyer, I want to touch base on some of the things that we're doing within the community and that the community is partnering with us to be able to do that. I do that because, like I said, these questions, I think we can answer a lot of them based on this flyer. So one of the things that we did was we have our Ready to Open program that started this past Monday. And that's because really we're in the phases of reopening. And I think it's super important that, we can give you the details in this webinar series. We can do Zooms, we can do Facebook Lives, and we're going to give you details. But for those of you that don't get the chance to watch, or for whatever reason you're not getting detail, there is some very specifics. Stay safe. Small businesses that are getting ready to reopen right now, they need to remember to stay safe. Simple things, social distance, wash your hands. I mean, Erica said it the whole entire, this past hour, wash your hands, sanitize, whatever that looks like. When you're covering your face to cough, don't cover with your hands, cover with the inside, because you're going to use those hands again to touch a surface. We've learned that from COVID. We learned that from flu. We learned that from SARS and all the other things that have been out there over the past few years. And of course, sanitizing your areas that you're touching regularly. For small businesses, let's practice some best practices. Again, opening phases, set an open date. Let the world know that you're getting ready to open. New hours, if you are shortening your hours or lengthening your hours, or not doing weekends now, let the world know. Clarify what products and services you're going to be doing. Some people are opening now on a limited basis. Some of them are limited in bringing their staff back. So maybe they don't have a full menu or a full list of services. So you as the business owner will need to share that with the public. And of course, hire or rehire your staff. You got to be prepared for what's upcoming. And of course, at your time, at your schedule. But we're here to help you do that. Get some marketing in place. Put a sign in the window, now open. Post it on your social media. If you don't have social media, you should. And at least let people know that you're open. Send out an email to your email list, something along those lines. So again, the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber has done a lot of things over the past 3 months to prepare small business owners for opening. And I just want to let everybody know out there that if you are a member and you are practicing these types of guidelines, then give us a call, because we have a whole digital package and an advocacy package that we're going to share with you and for you. We're going to let the world know that you're open. We're going to bring you on. We're going to do an interview. We're going to do a post. And so we need for you guys to understand that the chamber is here. As a matter of fact, we're excited because we're celebrating our 45th anniversary on Tuesday, and you guys are all invited to share with us. And yes, of course, we had to cancel our celebration. We can't have 200 people in the courtyard at this time, but we hope to have you online. And that is 45 years of servicing small business, mid-business, our corporate partners. That's 45 years of community, culture, and commerce. And that is something that we're very proud of. And we do serve small businesses. That's 65+% of what we do. But outside of that, we do have partners, and we need those large partners to help us support the small businesses. We need those sponsors that support the body of work we do. And one of those sponsors is New Mexico Mutual. And because because of them, we were able to bring you an entire month, the entire month of May, this webinar series. And you know, we're also supported by Mary Gallegos, who is just our board chair, not just our board chair, but she's also a supporter and a sponsor of what we do at the Chamber, because she believes in small business and she believes in the ability for small businesses to use the resources that are out there and how we train and share those business opportunities with our businesses to grow. So there is a lot of ways, and I think we learned today that one of those ways is partnering with companies that have the ability to support the small business community, like New Mexico Mutual, by sharing with their small business clients all of these incredible safety tips, all of this, how do we protect our workers and ourselves as we open, and the public has been super, super important. So before we close, I want to share just a few more comments. Erica, please share with us some last, some closing notes, things you want the audience to take away, and things that, you know, how can we contact you if you're not already a client of New Mexico Mutual, and any information you have to share.
Again, I just want to encourage everybody to not look at this as an overwhelming task. You know, as you mentioned, you know, office settings, you know, the biggest thing that they may have been required to do if they had 10 or more employees was record keep or have an emergency action plan for the event of a fire or something minor like that. Onto a construction company who requires hazardous communications and fall protection or whatever the case may be, it can seem like a daunting task, but please be rest assured that New Mexico Mutual is here to help you, whichever task you may need to accomplish. We're more than happy to guide you in the right direction if you're not our policyholder. But if you are, you know, of course, any resource that we can share with you, any advice that we can provide to you, you're welcome to call me directly. I can help you personally, or I can put you in contact with your actual safety consultant for your area. I can be reached at either 505-379-9645 or via email. My email address is Erica, ERICA, M as in Mary, at, and New Mexico Mutual is all spelled out, New Mexico Mutual, MUTUAL.com. So any resources that you might need, whether it's assistance with a sample template for an infectious control plan, you know, we even have some resources for HR, meaning how to implement a remote worker to work from home if that's not something you typically have a policy for, something like that, onto a motor vehicle safety program. But, you know, any of the resources that we talked about today, hazardous communications, personal protective equipment, you know, anything like that, we're happy to help you with. And also guide you to any other regulatory compliance resources that you might need.
Thank you, Erica. Miss Mary, same question. Take us out, share with us a little something, knowledge we can walk away with, because I know you really, your team is on the front lines. What you guys do every day is amazing.
You know, right now I'm where everybody who's watching this will be, but at the beginning it was scary and overwhelming because there was a lot we didn't know. But you know, as Erica said, it's you can take it in small pieces. It's like eating an elephant. It's one bite at a time.
That's right.
Set your priorities and create this list of what you're going to approach one thing at a time. If you're a business that's literally had your doors shut for a couple of months, you know, go through, do a walkthrough. What needs to be cleaned up, deep cleaned, sanitized. You know, are you going to spray pesticides? Whatever those things you need to do, get your space ready. You know, tables need to be farther apart, rearrange everything. And that way in your mind, you're seeing it happen. It becomes more real, and you are compliant when you do that. If there's supplies you need to get in place, sneeze guards, for example, masks, gloves, get all that stuff ordered before the opening happens so that you're prepared. And as you were saying, Shannon, start posting things, put teasers out there, opening soon, or even giving a date. Stop by for a cookie or a donut or, you know, free coffee or whatever. Just inviting people to come into your space and see that you are being safe. That's the thing your customer needs to see, is that you're confident in what you've done and that you are being safe on their behalf and your employees' behalf.
So thank you, Mary, for bringing that up. Two points before we go. One is, the city of Albuquerque, they're also on the front lines. Everybody's doing the best that they can at this time. And we work very, very closely with the mayor's office and with the economic development office within the city of Albuquerque. We're in regular contact with them, and we do as much as we can to share initiatives and to support the work that's happening with the small business community and the business community in general. And so one of those efforts that they have is the hashtag support local. And I'm so happy that you brought that up a couple times, Mary, because yes, there is, there's really no way to say it, and it's definitely not for discussion today, but yes, you're right. The questions have been coming through today, we're kind of fielding them, but there's been comments about the big box stores have been open, the small businesses have not. Yes, we know that, we understand that, but now, today, moving forward, these phases of reopening are happening. And so what we want to make sure is that people know who's open and what hours they're open and all of that. And that has been a little bit of a confusion for some, because they're like, well, if this nursery, if Lowe's is open or whatever, is this nursery open? The point is, we don't know. We don't know who's opening during what phases. So the city has this incredible website. It is part of the economic development website. You go to cabq.gov, type in economic development. Their page will come up, and as part of their page, it says hashtag support local. You can actually go on and register your business, talk about what your services are and all of that fun stuff, and that post. And these message boards and all of these lists are shared thousands of times a day. So get your business on that list, get your small business on that list. That's super important. And I want to close with saying one thing that is, I think we need to look forward to and we need to study and learn a lot more is technology. And right now, there is so many things that are happening in the world of COVID-19 when it comes to the discovery of technology and new products that are being launched at all the time. And, we didn't talk much about it today, but there has been a big push on temperature testing for employees. When they come into their workspace, a lot of the larger businesses do it already. One of our friends, partners, and sponsors at the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber has a really cool tool, and we're going to dive deeper into this, I hope, in a future webinar so that we can share it. But Pacific Automation has created this really cool tool that is kind of like a facial recognition type thing, but it also scans the temperature. So I want you guys to know that we are out there looking for these types of things that you're asking for, because one of them has been, I can't find thermometers, I can't find those roller balls, I can't find all this, and we understand you can't, because we can't either, but we're looking and we're in search of. And so we're going to talk about the really cool things that are coming up in technology. We hope to do that in an upcoming webinar to share with you guys. But if you are in need of that type of product because you have a larger staff and you need to figure out how to get open with that type of temperature control, please reach out to us at the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber, and we'll get you in touch with Pacific Automation to talk with them a little bit about what their product is and how you can go about getting that for your business. So I want to thank Erica, and I want to thank Mary Martinez so much today for you guys joining us on your Friday right before our holidays. So I hope we're not keeping you from your fun time. Like Mary said, downtime for our computers, we hope. But I really Probably not. Like I said, we work weird now. COVID has taught us to work weird. But we're really excited and very thankful that you guys could take the time to be with us today, to share with us these best practices and get our staff and our employees ready to reopen as we start the process here in New Mexico. We are thankful that that is coming up, and I know that small businesses now more than ever need us to support them. So we are out there on the front lines, and we're here for small business at the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber. So thank everybody for joining us today. We appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful 3-day weekend. Be safe out there, and we will see you guys on Wednesday where we discuss marketing during a time of crisis. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you. You too.